for 15 years. He spoke in Washington today about how new technologies can boost the economy, create jobs, and improve medical care. From the Information Technology Industry Council, this is just under an hour.
If everybody wants to grab a seat, we're going to kick it right off here. I would like to welcome all of our attendees, including the senior executives from across federal government, private sector, and our friends in the media. Thank you for joining us at our inaugural IT Visionary Series event. A little background on AFFIRM. AFFIRM is a nonprofit volunteer educational organization whose overall purpose is to improve the management of information, systems, and resources within the federal government. Since 1979, we've sought to meet this objective by facilitating knowledge sharing among all of our members, including federal, private, and academic organizations, gaining a broader understanding of senior management issues, and fostering the next generation of information technology leaders. This IT Visionary Series is something we're very excited about at AFFIRM. It's an event that aligns directly to each of the three goals I just mentioned. The main purpose of this series is to bring industry thought leaders and senior federal IT executives together to discuss innovative practices and technologies that can improve the business of government. We feel that this exchange of ideas is needed now more than ever to support our President's innovation agenda and the challenges that our nation faces. One of the results of this series is support for AFFIRM's longstanding commitment to education, with all of the proceeds going to our scholarship program. Over the years, we've raised close to $200,000 in the form of direct scholarships to students and endowments. Endowments we have created are at the universities, the University of Maryland, University College, Syracuse University, and we plan to establish a third one this year. We're very grateful to you, everyone in the audience, and to have Cisco support this morning in an effort to sustain our scholarship program. It's no secret that our President has stressed innovation in his agenda, and that the success of our nation's educational system, and this itself, is activities, not only to educate leaders of today, such as through this Visionary Series event, but also those of tomorrow through our scholarship fund. Today's session will be moderated by Mr. Dean Garfield. Dean is the President and CEO of the Information Technology Industry Council, a recognized driver for building public-private partnerships. We're very excited to build this relationship and hopefully an ongoing relationship with ITIC and Dean, and we're very excited and thankful that he was able to make the time to be here. And it's an example of us at AFFIRM looking to extend that reach outside of just the DC area and move into another venue. And then, of course, we're very honored to feature John Chambers. A little background, if you haven't read his bio. John is chairman and CEO of Cisco Systems. He's helped grow the company from $70 million in January of '91 to $1.2 billion when he assumed the role of the CEO, to its current run rate of $36 billion. John's received numerous awards for his leadership, including Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People, one of Barron's World's Best CEOs, and the Best Boss in America by 2020, to name a few. In addition, John has been widely recognized for his and Cisco's philanthropic efforts, taking an active role in corporate and social responsibility initiatives worldwide, which most recently included forming a public-private partnership, for example, to help rebuild healthcare and educational models in the China regions impacted by the May 2008 earthquake. John's been lauded by government leaders and publications worldwide for his visionary strategy, which is a great kickoff for this event, his ability to drive an entrepreneurial culture, and his warm-hearted, straight-talking approach, which you'll find today. Without further ado, a warm welcome, please, for the Chairman of the Board and CEO of Cisco, Mr. John Chambers.
Thank you, Pete. You and the AFFIRM board deserve a lot of credit for bringing this Visionary Series to Washington. John, thank you as well. Given all the great things that you've accomplished thus far in your career, it just makes perfect sense for us to kick off this series with you.
Well, Pete was very kind in the introduction. As you know, Dean, you know me well. We're far from perfect, but we try.
I appreciate that. I don't know if you know, John, this concept is loosely based on this very popular show because Inside the Actor's Studio. And I did some research, and the very first guest on that show was Paul Newman. And so you're in good company.
Greatly honored to be in that company.
So before we start talking a bit about leadership and innovation and technology, I think it would be useful just to give some context to the conversation by starting with you. So if you don't mind, if you would tell us just a little bit about your background and how that background has helped influence your leadership style.
Okay. I was born at Case Western Reserve when my parents were in med school there. I've never asked them, but I think I might have been a surprise. First year or two was raised by my grandmother in West Virginia as they finished school. I'm proud to be from West Virginia. Love their sports team, but love their great university. My family's very tight. I have two sisters, one in LA and one in North Carolina. My wife is my high school sweetheart, and she's been good enough to put up with me for 40 years.
Wow.
And I have a granddaughter who is the love of our life, who's 2 years old, and she loves to cuddle, and I hope that never goes away. I know it will at a point in time. I'm very proud of my two young adult children. You can call them children no matter how old they get. I believe in trying to make a difference both in our family, and my family's my first priority, but also trying to make a difference in life. And there's some areas that obviously you can always do better.
And how's that mountaineer background influence how you perform as a leader today and your outlook on leadership?
Well, I think most people out of West Virginia are just plain good people. Pretty practical, very straightforward. We had 5 generations educated at West Virginia University, and I apologize to the Pittsburgh fans, but we're going to beat you this year badly. And it also speaks to how if you have education, my parents taught me that, and I'd add to it the internet, the power of IT, you can do almost anything. And so I love being from West Virginia, very proud of it. But I've lived in Ohio and Atlanta and Greensboro and Boston and Chicago and Pittsburgh and in Indianapolis and Silicon Valley. So I've seen much of the country, and I'm very proud to speak still with a Southern accent. Although my wife is a speech therapist, she calls me her only failure in life. She cannot fix it. But other than that, she's pretty happy with me.
So I've got 2 young girls, and
Yes.
Their aspirations change every day
Yes.
on what they want to be. Did you always envision yourself being a CEO, or when did that hit you that you could ultimately be a CEO?
Well, I think both parents, being doctors, whatever broke, they could fix. Mom's psychiatrist, internal medicine, dad OB/GYN, delivered 6,000 babies. Their ability to really see the future is what I learned from both of them. And I think both of them prepared us from the very beginning as families to go on and probably, unfortunately, move outside the state for our dreams and aspirations. They gave us a good formal education background, a lot of love. But my one brother is the CEO of the University of North Carolina healthcare system. His wife is a master nurse. My other brother-in-law is a CEO of a pharmaceutical company in LA. And I think
You've got CEO in your genes.
Well, it shows you with education, you can do almost anything in life. That's why I'm so passionate about education. And I was fortunate enough to have 2 great parents, and I hope that I'm half as good as they were with my kids.
Great. There's, believe it or not, a growing connection between Silicon Valley and the silver screen. The Social Network is one of the top movies in the country right now. I heard that
It is.
Google has been optioned. There's going to be a movie made about that. Cisco, when they make the movie about Cisco. I may have given it away with my reference to Paul Newman before, but...
I knew, that's one of those, you can see that curveball coming. I couldn't get far enough to figure out if it was a curveball or a slider. Okay.
So who would play you in the silver screen, do you think?
Well, to tie it into the first question, when I first came to Cisco during the 90s, we were the stock of the decade, and a lot went very well for us. For a short time, the most valuable company in the world. And we grew our headcount from literally a couple hundred people when I first came to 70,000 today. Very proud of it. But each time when I talked to PR, they said, well, our goal was to put you on Business Week or to put you on Forbes, et cetera. And I said, no, your goal should be to put my whole leadership team there. And then once they got the leadership team on the folder, they said, good, now we'll do you. And I said, no, I want to do the whole company. And the point that I'm making is I don't think there's anything a leader can accomplish if they don't care who gets the credit, and if they share it with the people that most deserve it. So I think the leader gets, candidly, way too much of the credit and perhaps a little bit more of the blame than they deserve for how a company goes. But I think that it's kind of like airports. You name airports after dead aviators or after they retire. I'd rather see a movie about Cisco, and I'd rather see it be the team, but definitely after I retire. But never to dodge a question, I promise you I wouldn't.
I was going to come back to it, don't worry.
I knew you weren't going to let me off. There are two actors I really like very well. Matt Damon, the Bourne series of movies, and also Will Smith.
Great.
And both of them
See, I would have said Will Smith. We have something else in common.
Yeah, exactly. And both of them portray really good characters. They often win as a team, and they always get the bad guys.
Right.
And so if you were to ever pin me down on that, I'd say that I'd be honored after I retire for one of those two to do that.
Great. You started the answer by talking about up and coming.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've observed is Cisco's investment in up-and-coming markets,
yes.
Most recently in Russia. If you could talk a little bit about that and the reason for your moving in that direction.
Okay. Well, first, to level set, we're an American company. We're very proud to be American. Employees in our company, out of 70,000, 38,000 are in America. We're probably the only high-tech company that's really large, been around for 25 years. Having said that, a large part of future growth for every company in the world, regardless of where you're located, will be emerging countries. If you don't participate there, you're not going to be competitive. And we see that occurring on a global basis. Different than many of our counterparts, however, we often go in three ways. We usually lead in corporate social responsibility, and we usually win most of the awards on a global basis. One-to-one correlation between social responsibility. It's the right thing to do. It's also plain good for business. The second thing that we do is that we work with government leaders on what are their top 5 priorities. And now the exciting thing about high tech is you suddenly see high tech not just enabling the top 5 priorities, such as healthcare, job creation, industry transformation. You see it so deeply embedded in the strategy. And that's the change in the last 2 years. And the government leaders who are the early adopters get that and understand where it goes. The third thing that's happening in emerging countries, the innovation used to come out of Western Europe and the US, it's coming out of emerging countries. They no longer are following the US or Western Europe. They're skipping a generation. So remote healthcare, like what we did after the terrible earthquake in China, or how we do education after what occurred in Mississippi and Louisiana with Hurricane Katrina, or what we did in the Middle East after the Israeli conflict with Hezbollah. You suddenly see an ability to transform a country. So in Russia specifically, President Medvedev realizes that his country can't stay with just one industry, energy. It's not going to generate the jobs. They're losing their young educated workforce. They've got to diversify their country, create jobs, and Cisco is taking the lead in terms of helping them create a Silicon Valley outside of Moscow, and to talk about how you bring innovation there and how you do other things, along with about a dozen of our peers on a global basis and aligning with a dozen companies in Russia. You sit in the cabinet meetings with the president there. You go back and forth on very open issues. And what you see is an ability to suddenly change healthcare or education or innovation or job creation. What's fascinating, the exact same thing is happening in India. When you sit across from Prime Minister Singh in India, he talks about, can we, John, deliver $1 per doctor visit for every person in India? And at first when he gave me that assignment, I hesitated because that is an unbelievable concept of 1.4 billion people. But when you look at mass and scale, once you put in a national fast broadband, you could do that. And then perhaps on education, 40% of the over 800 million students in India don't even have a teacher on a given day in their classroom. You could suddenly use video capability and transform the education process to perhaps for $1 per month create world-class education. You do the same in China, and you talk about what can be done in terms of new industries. You go to Mexico with President Calderon, and his objectives are how do you get healthcare, how do you get education, how do you focus on security. And we're finding each of those countries around the world not only partnering with business, and Cisco in particular, on what can be the power of the network. We work to achieve job creation, healthcare, industry transformation, innovation, etc. So in Russia, we made $1 billion commitment. In China, we did $16 billion. In India, we did $7 billion. In Mexico, we started with $1 billion. We'll take it up. And we know how to partner with governments around the world, regardless of their form of government. And perhaps, for the first time, 3 billion people making less than $3 a day, which have been left out on a global basis. The power of the internet, bring education and bring virtual jobs to them. Perhaps we can address issues that all of society we should have addressed a long time ago.